What happens when new historical and scientific discoveries appear to pose significant problems for some of the more traditional interpretations of the Bible? Many people will deny that these discoveries are true or that there's some conspiracy behind the so-called discovery. Some will simply ignore the new evidence, choosing instead to hold fast to their long-held beliefs. There are some, however, that will develop theories or models to attempt to harmonize the new information with their beliefs and their interpretations of the Bible. For example, apparent problems with the history recorded in the Old Testament, such as the number of years that transpired since the creation of the world, are difficult to reconcile with the theories of the Big Bang or of evolution, which describe a vastly older universe. Proponents of traditional interpretations devote significant time and energy to reconciling both the stories in the Bible and the scientific data. Dr. Hugh Ross, who holds a PhD in astronomy from the University of Toronto, is one such proponent. In his view, the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, actually described modern theories like the Big Bang thousands of years ago. While several of Dr. Ross's interpretations have been challenged on this channel, and you can see the link in the description below, today we will deal with another claim that is made by Dr. Ross, namely that when the Old Testament describes God spreading out the heavens, this is actually a description of the Big Bang event.
What he was doing was stretching out the heavens. Now that's what you'll see in your English translations, but if you look at these 11 texts, the actual Hebrew word is the word natah, which means the expansion of what is being described. Now that had a huge impact on me as a 17-year-old, because I recognized that no scientist had even dreamed of the idea of an expanding universe until Albert Einstein produced his theory of general relativity. And George Lemaitre and Edwin Hubble discovered that indeed observations show that the universe is expanding. For thousands of years, the Bible stood alone as the only book of science, philosophy, or theology that declared that we live in an expanding universe.
While it is understandable that Dr. Ross would like the Bible to have described the modern Big Bang theory thousands of years ago, these types of arguments, particularly those that use the Hebrew text, are unfortunately untenable, and they weaken the validity of his overall presentation. Let's examine Dr. Ross's claim that the Hebrew word natah, to stretch out, describes the expansion of the universe at the time of and following the Big Bang. Now, it is true that the word natah means to stretch, or spread out, or reach, or extend. And if we only had the English translation to guide us, maybe Dr. Ross's conclusion would work. The problem is, when you examine this Hebrew verb, particularly in the context concerning the heavens, it becomes abundantly clear that it's a very specific type of stretching that's being described. To demonstrate this, let's take a look at some of the other contexts in which natah is used. The verb natah is often used to describe the stretching out of the material used to cover a tent. In these verses, you will often see the translator using the phrase to pitch a tent. For example, in Genesis 12:8, we read this about Abram. And he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched, or stretched out, his tent, with Bethel on the east and Ai on the west, and he built there an altar to the Lord, and he called on the name of the Lord. Similarly, in Genesis 26:25, and he built an altar there, and he called on the name of the Lord, and pitched, or stretched out, his tent there, and the servants of Isaac dug a well there. Other passages contain similar phrases, including Genesis 33:19, 35:21, Judges 4:11, and 2 Samuel 16:22, to name a few. But it is this use of natah, the stretching out of the material of a tent, that is the key to understanding the use of the verb in the passages concerning the heavens. For example, Psalm 104:2, who cover yourself with light as with a garment, who stretch out the heavens like a curtain. And Isaiah 40:22, It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. He who stretches out the heavens like a curtain, and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. The word curtain here, which is the Hebrew yeriyah, in Psalm 104:2, indicates a type of fabric used in the construction of a tent and even of the tabernacle. For example, this tent fabric is stretched out, natah, in Isaiah 54:2, quote, "Enlarge the place of your tent, and let them stretch out the curtains, the yeriyot, of your dwellings. Do not spare, lengthen your cords, and strengthen your stakes." Similarly, in Jeremiah 10:20, "My tent is plundered, and all my cords are broken. My children have gone from me, and they are no more. There is no one to pitch my tent anymore, or set up my curtains." Thus, the term natah has a specific meaning in these contexts, stretching out the fabric that covers the tent. The idea that God would stretch out the heavens like a roof of a tent fits well, of course, with the biblical and other wider ancient Near Eastern cosmologies. In Genesis 1, for example, we see God creating a dome above us called the heavens. So Genesis 1, 6 and 7, "And God said, Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the dome, and he divided the waters which were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome, and it was so." This dome or roof imagery is mirrored in the Akkadian text, the Enuma Elish. In Tablet 4, lines 135 and following, we see this. "Then Baal, or Marduk, relaxed, examining her, Tiamat's, corpse, to divide her flesh and make wonders. He split her in half like a dried fish. Then he set half of her up and made the heavens as a roof. He stretched out a skin and assigned a guard. He ordered them not to let her waters escape. He crossed the heavens and examined Ashrata. He made it a replica of Apsu, the underground water, the dwelling place of Nudimud, or Enki." Notice that half of Tiamat's body is used to create the heavens as a roof, and the skin was stretched out or pulled tight to keep the waters from escaping. Thus, when we return to the biblical passages concerning the stretching out of the heavens, we can now see the creation imagery that is intended. God stretched out the dome above and laid the earth beneath. For example, in Isaiah 48:13 we read, "Indeed, my hand has laid the foundation of the earth, and my right hand has stretched out the heavens. When I call to them, they stand up together." In no way does this stretching out indicate an early understanding of the Big Bang, or that heavenly objects expanded out from a central point. To the contrary, this stretching out was an extension of the material that made up the heavens, extending it out, as with a tent or curtain that acts as a tent covering, to create the dome that covers the earth and holds back the water above it.
That means that the Bible has predictive power. It's actually predicting future scientific discoveries thousands of years ahead of its time.
As we have hopefully demonstrated, the biblical text should not be read in this way, as a scientific text with predictive power. Instead of trying to make the Bible say what we would like in order to fit our interpretation, we should seek to understand these biblical passages in their ancient Near Eastern contexts in order to appreciate the meaning that the original writers assigned to them when they wrote these texts.